if you try to antagonize your judge by filing fake legal documents against them, that's exactly the situation where they're going to come after you.
This is a community-supported legal education channel. Find out how you can support our mission at the links in the description below.
Okay, this is going to be my first reaction to these things. I have only heard that this is epic and that this is equivalent to a sovereign citizen trapped in jail and crying, "Please help." Literally, this is Randall Rosado's blog. He claims to be a best-selling author. I'm much more inclined to write a book myself now and become a best-selling author if Randall Rosado can just become a best-selling author. He says, "Please help, I'm trapped in Lee County Jail and I can't get out, number 1. And of course, I, again, absolutely love web developers when they do these things. "I've been in jail for 2.5 years on bogus charges of fraud in a malicious prosecution involving the local judges in Lee County." Where is Lee County? Is this Florida?
Yeah.
"They have stacked up 19 charges to use the Florida point system to rack up my points and to increase my exposure and seek a life sentence against me. They have used the local news media to run false stories about charges that I have not actually been charged with, and also used other Florida agencies to run false reports with that same information. Wink News and Florida Office of Finance Regulation have made me look like a career criminal by alleging that I have a history of fraud when I have never had any such charges in my life. The only trouble I've gotten into in my life is a misdemeanor traffic case 27 years ago when I was a teenager, yet this reports have alleged," that's what he said, "that I am charged with forgery, which is not true, and has made up other stories that I collected rents on foreclosed homes for many years in 3 different Florida counties." Another bold-faced lie. I think it's bald. Is it not bald-faced lie? "Of course, I am not charged with any of that. Interestingly, the Lee County investigator responsible for this witch hunt against me used to work for the Office of Financial Regulation and conveniently reported the lies. Wink News also shows up on Lee County court case dockets because they are paid to report the stories that the court and state attorney's office tell them to report. So much for innocent until proven guilty. That doesn't exist in Lee County, Florida. In addition to the lies that have kept me stuck in jail for all of this time, Judge Archie Hayward set an overly excessive bond against me in violation of the 8th Amendment. My bail is $1.5 million, which has kept me from getting out of jail to fight the false allegations against me. To give you an idea of how obscene this bail amount is, there was a similar case in Dixie against a man named Terry Russell. This is the only case in the state that is similar to mine. They used the jury instructions from Mr. Trussell's trial for the trial in my case. Mr. Trussell's bail was $500 per count, while my bail is $100,000 per count for the exact same charges. Mr. Trussell initially had 10 counts against him. Of course, is he telling us what the counts are? We don't even know. Could be like 10 counts of trespassing, but if he's saying it's similar, maybe it's fraud. Lee County even conspired with St. Lucia County to add the same charges against me, and the bail in St. Lucia, which is still overly excessive, is $10,000 per count. How is this fair at all? Anyway, the reason for the obscene bail and fabricated charges is because the alleged victims include the clerk of court of Lee County and 2 circuit judges. They are using their own court to target me in their personal vendetta and have already ruined my life in the process. This has kept me from being able to maintain a competent attorney, forcing me to represent myself. The court then appointed me an attorney who was dedicated to helping the state get an easy conviction on me. The prosecutor, James Miller, and my previous court-appointed attorney attempted to extort me by forcing me to take a long prison sentence and threatening to add more charges and to arrest my wife on charges if I didn't. Yeah, we can talk all day about whether plea deals are fair or not, but if the guy cooperates, should he get some kind of plea deal? And if he doesn't cooperate, is it extortion that they will hit him with all the charges? I don't know. The prosecutor has the discretion to lower the charges for a cooperating perpetrator. If he's not cooperating, and if he's, in fact, antagonizing, which we're going to read about in a little bit here, maybe the prosecutor isn't inclined to give him any sort of a deal. And so if we're not going to give him a deal, is that extortion? I don't think so. Extortion happens when you use a illegal or you don't have the color of a legal claim. You don't have a claim against somebody and you try to extort money from them. If you don't have a right to publish a photograph on someone and you threaten to do so, or you'll publish it anyway, well, your act was in violation of the law, so then trying to get money out of someone so that you don't commit an act that's in violation of the law would likely be extortion. So this isn't extortion, although it may feel like it. I'll give him that. I brought this to the attention of the trial judge, but she said that Mr. Miller was just doing his job. That's the prosecutor. My bad, I didn't realize that extortion and violation of Florida law was a job function of the state's attorney. And like most of these people, notice how he doesn't tell you how it's a violation of Florida statute 83605. You're supposed to go look up every single thing he says and figure it out for yourself. That's not how legal proofs work, by the way. I filed a complaint with Mr. Miller against Mr. Miller with the Florida Bar Association. By the way, lawyers love when you do this. You don't understand how their job works, and so you just complain to their manager, the Bar Association, or the bar. That lawyers just absolutely love this, and that certainly makes them sympathetic to your case, and they definitely want to help you out more after you've filed a frivolous complaint against them. In response to the bar complaint, Mr. Miller justifies the extortion by advising the Bar Association that I am facing a life sentence based on bogus and inflated charges. I'm sure that's not Mr. Miller's language, and that he is protecting the taxpayers from my frivolous lawsuits because I filed federal lawsuits in New York, Southern District of New York, against a Lee County State Attorney investigator, against FBI agents, and against New York police officers for the unlawful search of my home when Lee County came to New York to help them arrest me back in 2016 when the case started. None of this argues anything about state long-arm statutes, about how it wasn't improper or why. He just concludes this was all illegal and you should believe me.
Well, in my head, if part of the investigation or the way that they conducted the warrants was improper, would that not be a motion during the criminal trial, like to suppress the evidence? Like, I'm not sure that you can file a civil suit against the prosecutors.
Well, certainly you can file a civil suit against prosecutors for misconduct and all that, but no, you wouldn't expect that civil lawsuit to eliminate the criminal charges. You would need to bring up the criminal charges, or bring up the argument against the criminal charges in the criminal prosecution, and then appeal from there. So if these are appeals, fine. If they're not appeals, then it sort of misunderstands the legal procedure involved. Or he's got to be that much better of a jailhouse lawyer himself in knowing all of the facets that he has to address in order to get some kind of relief from an outside court. He continues, the corruption here is unfathomable. I am fortunate that I can type this message using the smart jail mail kiosk computer system, and hopefully my blog posts don't cause them to take that away from me too. This all began with the actions of a man named Joel Saucy from Gloucester, Massachusetts, who lives in New Hampshire. Saucy signed and filed many documents against Lee County officials for foreclosing on his Fort Myers rental homes. So not paying your mortgage means they foreclose on your home. And after sitting in jail for over a year, decided to blame me for his actions. He refers to this as his free pass out of jail. The documents include federal arrest warrants. He apparently proposed to these individuals while referring to himself as a private attorney general. I'll write more about that in another post. That seems like exactly the wrong thing to do. If that's exonerating, why would you refer to it somewhere else? Okay. However, while in jail, Saucy sent handwritten letters to me admitting that he should not have filed federal arrest warrants, that he received bad advice from a woman named Beverly Grimes, and the Lee County State Attorney's Office urged Saucy to blame me for his actions so he could get out of jail. None of this actually shows us any facts. Do we have any facts of the case or anything that I could go over?
Yes. So that's going to be in the exhibits. We have a little bit of the background from the FBI.
Okay, so over to his court-appointed counsel. He threatened to use his representation of me to harm me. While meeting with me over a recorded video visitation, he said to me, "You want to play games? I can play games too. I mean, this is my defense attorney. Are you kidding me?" So he's, in response to filing a bar complaint against his attorney said, according to him, "You want to play games? I can play games too." And so the defendant says that he asked the attorney if he loves his wife or just lusted for her. I'm not even sure how that's even true. He insisted that I was guilty, never explained my charges or discussed my defense strategy. He represented me for a year and did nothing. I didn't even see any discovery documents until I fired him and represented myself. I even showed Judge Steinbeck that there was a conflict of interest because the attorney shared an office with another attorney. That doesn't work that way. Attorneys can represent separate clients, even if they're in the same office. We basically put up a wall. It's not a physical wall, but we have policies and procedures that we put in place that we don't talk about the litigation. We don't violate client confidentiality. So unless the defendant has some reason to believe that they shared information illegally, they don't actually have to be from separate. It depends from state to state, I think, but I don't really have to be from separate firms. They have to be separate attorneys. So then he says that they don't respect attorney-client privilege. He says that they shared privileged conversations with the prosecutor, and he accuses one of the attorneys of being a client of prostitution. Great. And notice how none of this addresses any of the things he's accused of.
You mean he self-represented and he went off on a tangent that's not quite relevant to the issue at hand?
Then he says most criminal attorney charge $5,000 per county, and with 19 counts, you can do the math. So I think he means counts. And so 500 times 19, or 5,000 times 19 would be $95,000. This is intentional to keep me from having a real attorney and not a hired gun from the court to do its bidding. Well, yeah, when you refer to so first of all, a public defender, they hate it. They really, really hate it when someone walks in and says, "Oh, can I get a real attorney?" That makes the public defender feel really good about the fact that they've taken a pay cut to do a job that is honorable and noble in defending people who can't afford to defend themselves. So you might remember when you are making fun of your own attorney or when you're complaining about your own attorney, you might want to learn their perspective, learn about them. Is it possible to get a shitty public defender who doesn't really advocate for you too much? Yeah, you could certainly get a shitty public defender, or a public defender whose office is under budget and the attorneys are overworked. That happens too. And those are certainly legal arguments that you can bring up in court to say that I haven't been given a proper legal defense because the public defender's office is underfunded and doesn't have enough money and time to spend on my case. However, the opposite is also true. Courts are so sick of these kinds of defendants who don't know the law, don't care to conform themselves to the law in any way, don't intend to cooperate with the procedure in any way, even enough to reach a point where they can defend themselves in a substantial way. They don't even want to comply with the procedure to get to the substance. They want to argue and argue and argue that we should never be in court to begin with, that no one can ever be charged with a crime, especially not the defendant, because injustice. And there's no reasoning and there's no legal proof and there's nothing for anyone to follow. We've been reading this, and he literally said words that talk about the actual facts of the case twice, and the rest of it is all just ranting. So then he has made a plea, not a legal plea, but rather a public plea for help. Help me, please. I am desperate. And he says that his 3 sons organized this fundraiser. He set an $8,000 goal. This is from February 22nd. Please help. I am looking at a life sentence for crimes I did not do. No one has seen my evidence, and unless I get help, no one will. I mean, he could do us all a favor by starting with the evidence right now. So let's see. He's going to start with the evidence. I am being maliciously prosecuted by Lee County State Attorney's Office for 3 years. They have stacked up a bunch of frivolous charges and are threatening me with a life sentence. The victims made up of Lee County's own judges, the clerk of court, other attorney friends around the state. Because of the corruption, I have been forced to represent myself. They don't want me doing that and keep trying to push a court-appointed attorney named somebody on me. That attorney has been working with this assistant state attorney against me, and after being denied replacement counsel for legitimate reasons, including a conflict of interest. So was the denial legitimate or was the denial illegitimate? That's a turn of phrase there. I was given no other choice except to fire my counselor. Now, the court has appointed that same person as standby counsel. The court is denying me the ability to file subpoenas to depose alleged victims and call trial witnesses, telling me to use my attorney. Okay. The state alleges that I created a fake court system, which is not true, nor is something that I am charged with. I don't know that the charges are labeled, created a fake court system. I'm sure it's a little bit more complicated than that. The reason why I'm not charged with creating a fake court is that it is not true, nor is it illegal. I'm pretty sure it is illegal to create a fake court system. I was hired by a private arbitration venue called the International Court of Commerce. Okay, now we're getting to it. This is sovereign citizen stuff.
Yep.
Which, according to the documents and posted rules provided by the state, is an alternative dispute resolution forum where parties can contract to resolve commercial disputes through administrative proceedings, arbitration, and or mediation. Hang on. I'm pretty sure the International Court of Commerce is not the same thing as the International Court of Arbitration or the International Chamber of Commerce. Yeah, International Court of Commerce, I'm pretty sure is the... Oh, I think I just found something here. Yeah, here's their fees. What is this? 1313 Pennsylvania Avenue, and their fees are on Square?
Yes, and I took it out of the exhibits, but they also filed for their employer identification number with the IRS and were granted that. So they were recognized as a company by the IRS.
Wow. Okay. The state has no jurisdiction over the ICC, which is based out of Washington, D.C. They are basically using these false allegations to slander my name and prejudice me to a confused jury. So wait a second here. Document preparation and notary, case filing fee for counterclaims, case filing fee for appeal, discounted case filing fee, new case filing fee, miscellaneous court expenses. Okay, I'm curious. The ICC claims to be a party of the United Nations Convention on the Recognition and Enforcement of Foreign Arbitral Awards. This act of Congress provides for judicial facilitation of private dispute resolution through arbitration and was held constitutional. The ICC is no more than a private administrative proceeding, and the rules state that the court itself does not settle disputes. Well, great. Then he should have no trouble representing himself if this was all valid. He should be able to present all of this to the court. Let's see what the actual charges were, though, right? That's what we want to get to. 19 bogus charges filed by ASA, Assistant State Attorney?
Yeah.
Are all from the actions of other people and don't qualify as crimes. The state provided jury instructions from another case. Like, okay, so who cares if the jury instructions are similar? You'd have to show us why. Like, what is any one jury instruction's fault? I don't see any explanation of that. Out of 11 remaining charges to documents filed by other people, none of them are fraudulent. So he's being accused of some kind of fraud. I'm indigent and wrongly incarcerated for 3 years due to excessive bond. Interesting. Here's something from the Office of the State Attorney. So it says, July 18th, 2019, today, Randall Rosado, 45, was found guilty, as charged, on 19 criminal charges. He was found guilty of 6 counts of unlawful retaliation against public officials and 13 counts of simulating legal processes. So yeah, it's not called maintaining a public court system. It's called simulating legal processes. The guilty verdict was reached by the jury following an 8-day trial in Lee County. Rosado faces life in prison. The crime involved arrest warrants, fictitious courts, and liens against judges, the Lee County Clerk of Court, and lawyers being filed. Most of the lawyers were involved in foreclosures. 2 individuals who were previously convicted in Lee and Okeechobee counties hired Rosado to assist them with the foreclosure of their homes. He created his own court and used the judgment from the fake court to get liens against the properties, I guess. The individuals who hired Rosado thought it was a real court. Another individual from California hired Mr. Rosado because he thought he was a real estate agent to assist him in a short sale, and Mr. Rosado instead took over his property and used the fictitious court in an attempt to delay the foreclosures. I appreciate the hard work of the entire Economic Crime Unit team, Assistant State Attorneys James Miller and Jennifer Royal, along with investigator Bob Nichols, had hundreds of pieces of evidence in this complex case. We appreciate the assistance of the FBI, including their domestic terrorism section, in the prosecution of this case, said State Attorney Amira Fox. The FBI testified that the defendant and co-defendants espoused views that were consistent with the sovereign citizen movement. Sovereign citizens are anti-government extremists who believe that even though they physically reside in the country, they are separate or sovereign from the United States. As a result, they believe they do not have to answer to any governmental authority, including courts, taxing entities, motor vehicle departments, or law enforcement. Mr. Rosado's sentencing is set for September 13th. Do we have an update on his sentence at all?
40 years?
Yes, that's correct. 40
Okay,
years.
so he was sentenced to 40 years in jail. And I'm assuming that Florida has some kind of early release for good behavior. So if he ever conforms himself to the requirements of incarceration, then he might actually get out before the 40 years is up. Co-defendant Joel Saucy was prosecuted in the 20th Circuit and was sentenced to 14 months and 10 years of probation, with a special condition that he only file court documents with a licensed attorney. A second co-defendant was prosecuted in another judicial court. I'm guessing that's going to be in New York. So that's interesting. And we have then his handwritten Exhibit A here, which Tactical tells me shows us some more stuff about the case.
Yes. So Exhibit A is just going to be the list of charges, but you're going to see who these documents, these ICC documents, were sent to, and then they're going to give an example ICC document.
Okay, so the state attorney of the 20th Judicial Circuit files this information against Randall Thomas Rosado, did falsely under color of law, May 22nd, 2015, attempt to influence, intimidate, or hinder a public officer or employee, to wit, Circuit Judge John Duria, in the discharge of his official duties through the use of a simulated legal process, a fraudulent federal arrest warrant, contrary to Florida statutes, attempt to influence another person, similarly, lots of fraudulent arrest warrants here, fraudulent arrest warrants for lots of different people, did simulate legal process, to wit, fictitious documents from the International Court of Commerce, which target Circuit Judge John Duria and include actions affecting title to real estate or personal property, liens, orders, judgments. So he attempted to file liens, financial liens, which is a lien secures property by a financial bond of some kind. So the most common one is a mortgage, or if you go to buy a car, you'll have a secured transaction, you'll have a lien against your car. So a lien against the car or a lien against the mortgage means, or a lien against the house, means that you can't sell the house or the car legally without fulfilling that lien first. So if you sell the house legally for $100,000 and there's a $50,000 lien, you've got to pay the $50,000 lien out of the proceeds of the sale of the house. Oftentimes, this has to be arranged with the lien holder because the lien holder doesn't want to let you sell the car or the house until and after you've paid off their lien. So you have to coordinate with them. If you're trying to sell the house or the car before you've paid off the lien, or simultaneously. Well, those things don't happen simultaneously. So you have to have this closing period. And that's what mortgage or house closing periods, or why a transaction involving a car that's not paid off yet might take longer than normal. You don't just pay the money for the car and go down to the notary or the registration company and transfer the car. You have to get the lien holder's permission first, and that usually takes a week or two for them to get the payoff and send the title and all that. In Pennsylvania, for example, the title to the car doesn't even go to the owner until the lien holder has been paid. So the lien holder holds the physical title for the car and then sends it to you when your car is paid off. I got mine a couple years ago, having paid off my car, and I can't sell my car if I have a loan against it. So that's what he's saying, is he got the International Court of Commerce to make false liens against judges' property and tried to get the courts to recognize the liens by the falsity being having that air of truthiness about it. Basically, the documents were good enough that someone at least had to think twice, and maybe some of the liens even went through. Let's see. Fictitious documents from the International Court of Commerce targeted Judge Joseph Fuller for liens and judgments and other legal documents, etc. There's more fictitious documents and fictitious documents and fictitious documents here. And then here's an example fictitious document, I think. Notice, okay, so this is labeled the International Court of Commerce, which does not appear to be international nor a court. And they claim that Joel Clifford Saucy was the claimant against these judges, Linda Doggett and others. And this is notice of intent to levy commercial lien obligation, private administrative proceeding. Notice of intent to levy commercial lien obligations. The International Court of Commerce is the proper venue for this private administrative action. The Administrative Procedure Act is a federal statute, Federal Arbitration Act, etc. So Linda Doggett is the clerk of court. Stephen Carta is an attorney. Judge Duria is a judge. Wow.
So it looks like he had an issue with a court case, and so then he tried to get a lien put against the lawyer and the court clerk and the judge that didn't do what he wanted.
The respondents trespass against the claimant's real property, violations of their oaths of office, constitutional damage, trust, and estate law offenses as detailed in the claimant's affidavit has totaled $2,220,000 in functional currency of the United States. The respondents were also notified through the affidavit that failure to provide the public bond insurance or insufficient insurance to cover the claim would lead to claimants seeking to collect for damages if the bonds of the lien debtor are insufficient. All real and movable property and bank savings of the lien debtors, except wedding rings, keepsakes, family photographs, and the property normally exempted in the lien process, I guess, is then levied against. All respondents have failed to respond or rebut the affidavit as a result of their failure to provide their bonding information claimant is seeking to collect. Okay, so forgetting that a private court would then have no right to levy, this private arbitration company has tried to use this air of legal process to levy against judges and claims that they have to put up bond and they haven't responded, so therefore they're in some kind of default. These are all truthy legal words that in a court would mean something, but in a fake court are nothing. They're more than nothing. It's like kind of this extortion or coercive legal process where they're trying to convince someone in an actual court system to obey their fake court system.
And I think it's kind of this backwards sovereign citizen thinking, in a sense that if you're told that this court has jurisdiction over you and you have no choice in it, and sovereign citizens try to get out of that jurisdiction in all sorts of ways. Well, the opposite of that is, well, we can just invent our own court and force people to be subject to our rules and stuff. So let's just backwards engineer a court and do the same thing that the government is doing.
Yowza. So yeah, this is signed by Joel Clifford Saucy, and that's obviously not Randall Rosado, but the jury has obviously agreed that Randall Rosado was a key part of this, that Randall Rosado had hired Joel Saucy to create these documents. And these, if I've received documents like this before, there are various scams going around in email chains, and I guess even sometimes on legal referral websites, and we all watch out for them. But as a lawyer, you'll definitely get an occasional packet of information and an explanation from someone, and the packet of information will look very official, and the explanation will seem like there's some kind of claim. But then you find yourself spending an hour trying to figure out, and then 2 hours trying to figure it out, and then 3 hours to figure. And finally, somewhere along the way, you go, "There's nothing here. Like nothing here actually says anything legal. It just all looks like it. It's like the cargo cult of legal documents." Go back and read about Richard Feynman's definition of cargo cult science. He talks about how during World War II, or maybe it was the Korean War, it might have been one or both. I think it was World War II, but it also could have been the Korea War, because Korea is right next to Japan, so same sort of place. And the United States has military bases in the Philippines, right? We stage operations in the Philippines for operations in Japan and operations in Korea, or otherwise, the islands surrounding the South Pacific there and all that. So some of the more primitive tribes of native people who lived on those various islands saw the tremendous power and ability and prosperity of the United States military. They had not seen this stuff before, or maybe they just got a bad impression of it or something. And of course, people seeing that there are other people in the world who have tremendous prosperity and ability and power and equipment, and they can fly, and cargo comes dropping out of the sky in parachutes and stuff like that. Well, the natives, some of them, and they do this to this day. If I understand correctly, there are still cultures who perform rituals to this day, trying to bring back the prosperity and power and abundance and ability that the U.S. military has by not doing anything like appealing to the U.S. government for aid or something like that, or whatever, but rather by creating fake runways and fake conning towers and fake barracks out of whatever materials they have available. So often that means bamboo and tree trunks and sticks and stuff. And they'll actually have rituals where they make the motion, the waving motion of a person who's directing a plane from taxi to runway, or away from a gate, or away from a loading area or whatever. They'll mimic the behavior of soldiers and military personnel and conduct rituals very, very much like you would expect to see someone appealing to a god or a deity for abundant harvest or plentiful rainfall. They appeal to the gods of the military by mimicking them, making fake runways and fake military bases and things, and hoping that causes the abundance and power and might to return. And some people realize that's not how it works, and they still do it for fun, and then other people are swept up and actually believe it. And I believe that's what's happening here. I believe that Randy Rosado really thought that he could just make his own international court and do his own thing and tell everybody that he's sovereign, and then no one would ever do anything to him. Of course, he was wrong. When you break the law in this way, they physically come and get you. And it's not like he wouldn't have had warnings along the way. And I do believe that there was some kind of money involved here. Do we have a number on how much money he allegedly stole, for lack of a better word?
I've seen some news sources that are questionable, alleging into the billions that he made through this.
Billions. I don't know how. Yeah, I don't know how he would have made billions off of 24 people, but
Maybe it was billions of dollars worth of liens that he filed.
yeah, that could have been it. If he filed this $2,222,000 lien against enough people, then maybe that has reached a level of billions that he's done in liens. So he did the same thing to Linda Doggett, the clerk of court. It's the same document. Be careful with your edit. There's a couple addresses in there. Federal Bureau of Investigation, unclassified electronic communication. Title, lead to assist in coordinating an arrest and search. Tampa requests New York HVRA to provide assistance in executing a Florida state-issued arrest warrant and to provide assistance in obtaining a New York State search warrant from probable cause developed in Florida and elsewhere. So this is actually really cool. This is what they look like when a state reaches out to another state through the FBI to help arrest somebody on what we would call a long arm statute. The long arm of the law, of Florida law, reaches out to New York and says, we can get somebody in New York under these circumstances. New York, please help us. And New York will help you. They will. I mean, when you're the prosecutor, not when you're Randy Rosado. Background, investigator Robert Nichols from the Office of the State Attorney for the 20th Judicial Circuit contacted the FBI with a request for the FBI to consider joining an SAO-led investigative effort regarding the above-captioned subject. A review of the investigation reveals Gregory Park purchased a vacant lot located at Lehigh Acres, Florida. In 2006, Park built a home on that lot utilizing a construction loan, which was subsequently modified to a 30-year adjustable rate mortgage. Park stopped paying taxes on the property in 2009. At some point, he walked away from the property. In 2008, Randy Rosado advertised the abandoned Lehigh Acres property on Craigslist as a rental, and shortly thereafter, he found a tenant and leased the property to her. That same tenant has rented the property from 2008 up to very recently. The tenant, for at least the period of time during her tenancy, was paying the rent by check and sending it to Rosado via U.S. mail. In 2010, Wells Fargo, the mortgagee, filed for foreclosure on the Lehigh Acres property. In April 2010, a warranty deed was filed transferring ownership of the Lehigh Acres property from Greg Park to Randy Rosado as trustee. In March of 2010, an answer to the Wells Fargo foreclosure action and motion to dismiss were filed purportedly in Park's name. Rosado, as trustee, filed the responsive pleading. In May 2011, for unknown reasons, Wells Fargo voluntarily dismissed its own complaint. In 2013, Rosado transferred ownership of the aforementioned property from the Lehigh Estate Trust to Palm Beach Capital Trust as trustee. The deed was produced by Robert Ingham, Esquire. 2014, Wells Fargo initiates a new foreclosure action. A default judgment in favor is issued. Rosado files notice of distress and a commercial lien in later 2014. The next day, a Joshua Hauserman Esquire files a motion to dismiss. Judge Starnes found in favor of Wells Fargo in 2015. Later in 2015, Rosado objected to the sale of the property as attorney in fact for Park based on a previously filed promissory note filed by Rosado, which has no legal weight. Park files a motion to dismiss the objection filed by Rosado, claiming he does not know Rosado, nor has he asked Rosado to represent him. Rosado has either directly or impliedly held himself out as being affiliated with the Reichman Group and the International Court of Commerce in sham proceedings supporting his alleged property rights or in UCC filings against elected officials, members of the bar, including judges, in retaliation for their legitimate roles in addressing legitimate property interests. In summary, Rosado has allegedly unlawfully converted real property for his own use, which in this subject investigation includes renting it out for 8 years to a tenant and collecting rent payments, with some having been sent via U.S. mail. which that makes it more of a crime because you used the U.S. mail service for your fraud. Moreover, Rosado has conducted multiple UCC leaning operations against Florida state judges, prosecutors, attorneys, sheriffs, and clerks of court. He has done the same in Monmouth County, New Jersey. Oh, good. We can look him up in Monmouth County, New Jersey, too. Investigators from the 20th Judicial Circuit in the state of Florida are in the process of obtaining an arrest warrant for Rosado. This was back in 2016, remember? Additionally, the state attorney opines that sufficient probable cause exists to obtain a search warrant for his residence in Goshen, New York. Tampa requests New York HVRA to assist through its white-collar crime task force in obtaining local assistance in serving the arrest warrant on Rosado and obtaining a search warrant, supplying a sworn affidavit, etc.
And I'm going to sort of stop you there. There were a few more pages that were just a communication between the two offices, and I didn't include those because it wasn't that interesting.
And then there's also this notice of removal. So it looks like he tried to remove his case to federal court for the Middle District of Florida. And he copied or tried to make out his version of the removal requirements. All the charges against the defendant involve the fraudulent filing of federal documents or the filing of documents from an organization within federal jurisdiction. This doesn't really say much.
If you can go back to the PDF for 1 second, there's one more exhibit, and I just wanted to say that it goes to the his extortion claim, where he believed that he was being extorted by the prosecutor because the prosecutor offered him, instead of pursuing 20 years in jail, the prosecutor said, we'll give you 5 years of probation, and we won't bring RICO charges, and we won't we won't go after your wife. And you can only file lawsuits with a licensed attorney, which is a pretty good deal. But I guess Randy took that as extortion.
I don't know who is this transcript from?
So from the context, I believe that this is an investigator that is talking to Randy, and that the investigator is saying, we're not interested in you. We're not interested in filing criminal charges against you. We're really trying to go after the head honcho, which is Saucy, or Soci.
Okay.
And so then I guess Randy is feeling like he was told that he wasn't going to be pursued on this, and now he's being pursued, and he feels that that's unjust.
The gig is up, so I think you need to get on top of it right now. And I'm not interested in you. I'm not interested in making any criminal charges against you, but I do know you're aware of what's going on. And Randy's in trouble. He's going to jail for a long time. He's not going to go to jail for 6 months. He's going to go to jail for a long time. A very long time, and a very long time. And the bond on him is going to be $1.5 million. He's going to sit in jail until this goes to trial for years. And of course, if he's found guilty, he's going to be serving years of a sentence. So the gig's up. He's played an interesting game, and for lack of a better word, because he's hiding behind this to try to make it like, oh, he's working, he's an attorney, and he sets up courts, and he's doing all these different things. We know it all. We didn't come into this naive. We did our homework. We know exactly what's going on. I've tried to superficially walk around little tidbits of this to see what you would want to talk about, but you're smart. It's time to get out in front of this. And he didn't. He had apparently every chance to come clean or change his ways, and he very stubbornly refused to ever conform himself to any of the requirements of law, really any of them here. And so he now has a sentence of 40 years when he could have had 5 years probation. Let us know what you think of that one. If we should try to find more on Randall, and I think there was something in New Jersey, and we'll see if we can find anything more on him there. But yeah, So Florida has now had a trial, and a jury of Randy's peers has agreed that he misused the legal process, set up fake courts, used them to try and get, if you have a judge and you don't like your judge, you really can't do much about it other than pay attention and make sure the judge doesn't actually break any laws or anything. If you try to antagonize your judge by filing fake legal documents against them, that's exactly the situation where they're going to come after you. I don't think that all 350 million people in the United States are really just sovereign citizens who are voluntarily allowing a government to regulate them. I'm pretty sure that we all agree on some level that society functions best when we all cooperate with some basic rule of law. If Randy wanted to read his history, he can start with Magna Carta all the way back from 1200 and what was it, something? The first recognition of human rights and the requirements for rules of law. I'm sure that there were courts before that, but Magna Carta started some of the modern legal philosophies that people have fundamental rights and a fundamental right to a proper, meaningful court proceeding, not just some sham court. Randy seems to be okay with the sham courts because they work out better for him until now. Wow, so this is like the International Court of Commerce thing is sort of the head honcho or the organization behind this organized crime, I guess. I know that the quote is from Sneakers, "Don't kid yourself, it's not that organized." But, it's some kind of organized crime, it sounds like, where they find foreclosed properties and then file fake legal documents trying to inhibit banks from pursuing foreclosures, and then they've got free properties to rent out to unsuspecting renters who don't realize their properties are not legally rented to them.
Yes, and I believe there was a situation where, people believed that Rosado was a mortgage broker, but he didn't have a license, or that he did have a license, but he didn't have like a prerequisite or something like that. And so he committed a little bit of fraud that way. So there was lots of fraud, then got in trouble, didn't like the people who got him in trouble, and then tried to extort / blackmail / influence them by saying, "You owe me $2.2 million."
Yeah, yowza. So imagine you rented a place and you go to enforce basic landlord-tenant law, and instead Randy says, "Oh no, that law doesn't apply to me. Look at this let's look at this thing from the International Court of Commerce." Some people wouldn't know. Some people would be fooled and would think that they had lost their landlord-tenant case, or et cetera, that they, whatever he said, whatever he wanted to say to that person to win his dispute, he could just say that because he's got no oversight, no checks and balances, and no public rule of law. It's all like private stuff that only he and the International Court of Commerce know. So it sounds like to me it's a massive organized crime ring is really what that comes down to. I wonder if we can find anything else out about this, because my searches for International Court of Commerce did not come up with much. Sure enough, Reddit and Crime Shop and Newsweek all have a story that came out about a week ago. Florida man creates fake international court. Here, this appears to be his picture. Let's see, here's his picture. This appears to be Randy. There is an infographic here from graphics reporter Dan Swenson. It does show that there's a self-declared sovereign citizen movement and that they've had various clashes with the law. Investigation began with homeowners who failed to meet their mortgage obligations being accused of filing frivolous lawsuits or liens against real property with the intent to defraud and harass everyone involved in the foreclosure process. The tactics and philosophies taken by these homeowners were identified as part of the sovereign citizen movement. Their intent is to intimidate law enforcement, courts, government officials, as well as financial institutions, writes investigator Robert Nichols for the state's attorney's office. Nichols explains that sovereign citizens convene their own special courts, such as the International Court of Commerce. They do not recognize federal, state, or local laws. They will issue their own fake but realistic-looking indictments and arrest warrants. In one court filing, Rosado wrote, "I am a private citizen of the Florida Republic Union State, and I have not waived any of my constitutionally protected Yahweh-given rights secured under the nation and state constitutions of this country." One of the attorneys is listed as part of the Reichman Group. I think we saw that before. A disclaimer at the bottom of the firm's website reads, "The Reichman Group is not a public law firm or a member of any state's private bar association." I don't know that the state bar association is considered a private organization. It is definitely a state actor and is therefore a public organization, or at least falls under the state action doctrine, if I've got my facts correct here. Nichols testified that the group is not licensed to offer any legal services in the state, and that the false documents were prepared by Randy or the International Court of Commerce themselves, and it appears to be a fictitious person. The International Court of Commerce was further revealed to have been created by Rosado, and the website's domain is registered to his wife. The court appears to have been a product of Rosado's imagination. He used fictitious names and companies to commit this fraud. Rosado deceived his clients into believing he was using the findings of an international court when in actuality it was just Randy Rosado utilizing his own personal make-believe court, and the attorney representing Rosado did not immediately respond to requests for comment.
So he tried to put liens against people who were legally educated. So the law clerk, a lawyer, and a judge. But all I'm thinking is, like, imagine that you get a letter like this and you aren't legally educated, and it looks like there is this court that's demanding that you pay money, or that you settle with someone, or that you provide your financial and bond information before the arbitration begins, or something like that. Like, it would be really scary, because it does look legitimate to an untrained eye.
He's written a book that claims to be an Amazon bestseller, and it's written by him and his wife. We invite you to share our journey of hope, strength, and awareness. What will be revealed to you in the following pages are some of the most intimate and dark moments we've ever experienced. More importantly, we will share our greatest triumph. Well, his greatest triumph so far has been maybe his greatest darkest moment for him, but his greatest triumph for us is his failure to triumph over the court system, nabbing himself 40 years in jail instead of the 5 years of probation that he was originally offered. I can certainly understand why a person would feel coerced or extorted to make a more or less hasty decision on agreeing to a plea deal, but this is a person who refused the plea deal because they simply wanted to continue to extort everyone, pretending that their own imagination was in fact reality. I don't know that I have any sympathy for him whatsoever. He seems to have set out to defraud people from the beginning, and he's just using all of this flourishing language and hope and strength and awareness and all this to make him sound sympathetic when he's really just stealing money from people. So he's a common thief. He's just it's an advanced practice. He tried to do it, through fake legal documents. Anyway, let us know what you think in the comments below, and we'll get this edited for YouTube and see what everybody else thinks about it. So that's our show, everybody. Thank you for joining me. I am Leonard French, your favorite copyright attorney. Thank you for your support on patreon.com/ljfrench and sponsors.com/law. This is a community-supported legal education channel. This channel would not be possible without your support and your views. So please like, subscribe, click the bell if you would like to have all of our notifications. Thank you very much to our supporters for the month of September. Thank you to Joshua Davis and TandaPay, who are sponsoring our channel in the month of September. We expect to be done with his video very early this week, so I hope that you'll all get a chance to hear really remarkable ideas that might even apply to lawful masses and legal defense funds. Still working on it. We'll see if we can get something put together for you this week. Thank you to our $50 plus supporters, John Steele, Gavin Barnard, Kyle Mudrak, Eevi, Michael Pearce, Spirit Bear, Jan Negrey, Daniel Perez, Snorre Wisotzky, Joe Tyson, and Blackleaf. And thank you to the $5 plus supporters. All of the $5 plus supporters, which includes everybody else, goes on the LED panel behind me as well, now that I'm back in the States. And we're taking the channel to the next level, but we're also overwhelmed with it, so there will be some changes over the course of the next month or so, and I hope that we will be looking back and it'll be a bunch of wonderful changes. So anyway, love you all, have a great day. Oh, here's a Nico dog for you. There we go, that's better. Now we have Nico. Aha! Oh, just as he wants to get down. Oh, it's my boy. It's my boy. I love my boy. I don't know where Ilse is. She's probably outside. I'm gonna go check on her. Love you all. I'll see you in the videos that drop. Have a great week. Bye.